coming. This is just one aspect of the evil I'm talking about today. It would behoove you, for the sake of your family as well, to, take preparations. Not to say God cannot hide you in the day of evil, or that He can't cover you under the shelter of His wings, but I'm just saying, if you've done no preparatory prayer, no preparatory preparations, if you've acted as though none of this was ever going to happen, it's just not a good situation you want to put yourself in. That first article, that was the end of the first article. That was from a guy named Ken Adachi. And the second one, which is kind of segueing into this article, is called The Sound of Silence, the Antithesis of Freedom. It starts out by saying the year was 1961, and John Kennedy was soon to become the 35th president. Shortly before Kennedy's inauguration, President Dwight D. Eisenhower shocked the nation and the world with a televised farewell speech. The speech content was so shocking because General Eisenhower was a very popular war hero. American military might was second to none. Eisenhower, a highly decorated five-star general, was the supreme commander of all the Allied forces during World War II. It was Eisenhower's leadership during Normandy invasion that ultimately freed Europe from the Nazi scourge. Well, I have a very hard time giving man credit for something like that, but that's his take on it. Incredibly, in his farewell address, this he calls him a great American hero, did not warn the nation of the budding communist threat or horrors of the nuclear proliferation. Instead, his career military genius poignantly and soberly declared to this great nation, quote, this is what he said in his farewell speech, Eisenhower, "We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security more than the net income of all the United States corporations." That's a lot of money. This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. This total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development. Yet, we must not fail to recognize its grave implications. Now, he's even saying there's grave implications to this type of military buildup. Our toil, resources, livelihood are all involved, so it is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for this disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or our democratic processes. So here we have a career military officer and sitting U.S. president warning the nation in its final farewell speech that something called unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex poses an extremely dangerous threat to our society. According to Eisenhower, this threat still exists and will persist. So to President Eisenhower, this evil was a much greater threat to America than Castro's Cuba or Khrushchev's Soviet Union. What exactly could have happened in the military-industrialist establishment that would have caused Eisenhower to issue such a strong, wordy warning? Improved machine gun production? No. Battleship production? No. Nuclear submarines? No. Proliferation of nuclear warheads? Was a concern, of course, but a concern that most Americans were fully aware of. Now, obviously, what caused Eisenhower such deep concern had to be something much more pervasively shadow, dark, and secret. Some new covert technology had clearly emerged that had the very real potential to provide certain individuals with the acquisition of unwarranted influence that would in turn endanger our liberties regarding the processes of government and a free society. In other words, it had a clear potential to circumvent the voice of the people and completely empower unelected power mongers. Eisenhower would submit was warning America about something called, if not similar to, the sound of silence, which is what we had talked about earlier, mentioned earlier. So, like Marine Corps General Smedley Butler, who decades earlier declared to Congress that the war is a racket, Ike knew that such absolute power and total covert control over the minds and hearts of individuals would corrupt society absolutely. He also knew and understood, as did the German philosopher Goethe, no man is more hopelessly enslaved than he who falsely believes that he is free. Therefore, he issued his strong concluding warning to America. Today, the author must do no less. The Sound of Silence is a military intelligence code for the certain psychotronic weapons of mass mind control tested in the early 1950s. It's been around a long time. Perfected during the 70s and used extensively by the modern U.S. military in the 1990s, despite the opposition and warnings issued by such men as Eisenhower. This mind-altering covert weapon is based on something called subliminal carrier technology, or silent sound spread spectrum, also nicknamed S-Quad or Squad in military jargon. It was developed for military use by Dr. Oliver Lowry of Norcross, Georgia, and is described in U.S. patent number 5,159,703, or the patent number again is 5159703. U.S. patent. You can go check it out yourself if you like. It was under the Silent Subliminal Presentation System. That was what the patent's under. And it was available for commercial use in 1992. The patent abstract reads, "This is a silent communication system in which non-aural carriers," and I really don't know what that means, but non-aural carriers in the very low ELF, electromagnetic frequency, or very high audio frequency, VHF, range, or the adjacent ultrasonic frequency spectrum are amplitude or frequency modulated with the desired intelligence and propagated acoustically or vibrationally for inducement into the brain, typically through the use of loudspeakers, earphones, or piezoelectric transducers. The modulated carriers may be transmitted directly in real time or may be conveniently recorded and stored on mechanical, magnetic, or optical media for delayed or repeated transmission to the listener. So this is a form of absolute mind control that there's a patent for, and it controls the mind through either using what they call ELF, VHF, or ultrasonic frequencies, and these frequencies are amplitude or frequency modulated with the desired intelligence, whatever evidently they put into it what they want, their desired intelligence, and propagated, meaning put out acoustically or vibrationally for inducement into the brain of the person, typically through the use of loudspeakers, earphones, or piezoelectric transducers. I'm trying to make it a little more sense, because this is almost like legalese, the way they're describing it here. In layman's terms, this device, the Sound of Silence, simply allows for unwarranted implantation of specific thoughts, emotions, and even prescribed physical actions into unsuspecting human beings. In short, it has the very real ability to turn human beings into mere puppets in the hands of certain controllers or puppet masters. Eisenhower knew full well that what such a weapon could do in the hands of a greedy, conspiring men and women scheming to control the planet. Well, those are the ones that essentially are at the top of the food chain anyway. You know, you can look at the 13 families of the Illuminati and all these people in high politics and all these people in secret societies are at the head of their given false religions. You know, these people are usually the most depraved people in his society. And they're the ones at the very top. And they're the ones that have control over this technology. So Eisenhower knew full... Okay, we already read that. It could easily result in the takeover of an American society without a single bullet being fired. Now, you have to understand, this guy's writing from the standpoint of an unsaved person. He's acting as though we're defenseless against this and there's no God, this type of thing. Of course, I don't know, maybe toward the end he does say something about that. But I would write it in a totally different way. I guess if it was me, not to say that I think I'm better, but I believe this has a lot to do what it talks about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where it talks about the restrainer that's restraining things, okay? And then the wicked will be revealed. This is the Antichrist, and he's